try to choose jobs that are very different, just trying to mix it all up. That keeps it fresh for me, but also just trying to do things differently and finding different ways to enhance the films even more. By the time you get to the next one, I've got a whole new tool set here that I can use on something completely different.
This career is great because each project is brand new. Each group of people is brand new. Even when we're revisiting series and revisiting people with whom we've worked before, it's still just a new mountain to climb. It's always fresh and new. I've been in this business for 12, 13 years, but I still feel brand new every time I sit down.
Hi, this is Josh Apter from Manhattan Edit Workshop. Welcome to Sight, Sound, and Story, episode 49. They are starting to catch up with my age. In about 3 months, Sight, Sound, and Story will be older than I am. But in this episode, we're going to join editors Nic Zimmermann, ACE, and Charles Little, the second ACE. We're going to talk about editing long form and series documentary. It's really interesting because we've talked to a lot of documentary editors and creatives, and they're all different. So whether you're cutting something that takes years in the editing room or something that's much more fast paced, like cutting series where you're on the deadline, they present unique challenges. This is no different. So Nick's going to talk about Greatest Night in Pop, the film about the recording of We Are the World, which is kind of awesome. I just rewatched that not too long ago. And Twister Caught in the Storm. We're going to have Charles discussing series like Full Swing and Welcome to Wrexham and the unique challenges in those shows as well. Can't wait to get to it. It's going to be moderated by award-winning editor, producer, and former president of the Karen Schmeer Film Editing Foundation, which we've been honored to support since its inception, Garret Savage. So I'd like to thank our sponsors, ACE, American Cinema Editors, AJA, and Filmmaker U, and of course, I would never have an event without thanking Jason Banke, the president of Manhattan Edit Workshop, and Janet Dalton. They do all the heavy lifting. All I do is here, show up, try to look like I'm not just coming out of bed, and make sure my dog doesn't bark during the intro. So without further ado, please sit back, relax, subscribe. If you are new to our channel and our event series, let us know if you like what you're seeing. And if it's something that you'd like to see, also, please feel free to let us know on any social channel. You can, reach out and email us at info@mushop.com. Again, this is a long-winded Josh Apter. Thanks for joining us and welcome to the show. Curious about creating high-quality YouTube videos? Enroll in video editing and production classes at Manhattan Edit Workshop to sharpen your skills and turn a hobby into a career. Start your journey to becoming a pro today.
All right. Thank you so much, Josh. And thank you to Manhattan Edit Workshop for having us today at this panel. Nick and Charles and I are excited to talk about all things editing. I'm happy to be here with Nic Zimmermann and Charles Little II. Nick, you're in London, I believe, and Charles, you're out in Los Angeles, and I'm here in Boulder, Colorado. So we're covering at least 3 time zones.
That's awesome. We're global.
I want to start by just giving the audience a little bit of information about our editors here. So Nic Zimmermann is an award-winning documentary editor with a diverse body of work that includes Emmy and Grammy nominated The Greatest Night in Pop, Sweet Bobby, My Catfish Nightmare, and The Twister, Caught in the Storm, which actually premieres on Netflix on the very day that we're recording this, on March 19th. Nic's work has been recognized with numerous awards, including the Grierson Awards Best Entertaining Documentary for 'Twas the Night Before Christmas, the Royal Television Society Awards Best Edited Documentary for Tyson Fury, Gypsy King, and his nominations include an American Cinema Editor Eddie nomination for Drive to Survive and a Cinema Eye Honors Award nomination for The Greatest Night in Pop, which premiered at Sundance and was the most watched music documentary of 2024. Nic grew up in Cape Town, South Africa, and like I said, now he lives in London. And Charles is an Emmy Award-winning film and television editor, producer, and director. His editor credits include FX's acclaimed documentary series, Welcome to Wrexham, which garnered Charles his first Emmy Award, multiple seasons of Ryan Murphy's drama series 911 and 911 Lone Star, and Lauren Greenfield's 5-part miniseries for FX called Social Studies, which premiered at Telluride in 2024. Charles has also produced and directed a competition series for MTV, a global ad campaign for Singha Beer, and has received Telly Awards and Best Editing Awards for his work. Charles was raised between Chicago and Minneapolis and currently lives in Los Angeles. So thank you guys for being with us.
Cool, it's a pleasure to be here.
Yep. Thanks for having us.
Well, after hearing all those accomplishments, I'm curious, how did you get to be where you are now and work your way through all those experiences?
Well, as you said, I grew up in Cape Town. I was always knew I wanted to go into a creative field. Initially, I wanted to go into writing, so I went to university to study English, and quickly realized that it was not for me. It was too sort of I don't know, it just wasn't for me. So I moved on to film school, and then very quickly fell in love with editing in the dark rooms of the film school. And back then it was analog tape to tape. It was just super fun. So then I went into that and got lucky. I went to a post-production house where I was lucky again because the bookings team always tended to double book things, and so they quickly asked me, oh, "Can you edit?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." And so I got into a room with a client who was a renowned dragon, and she was very impressed, and I just started cutting full time from then on out, and then worked my way through in South Africa before moving to London, and then started from the ground up over there, working on daytime and reality and stuff, and then really trying to take the hardest jobs I could to kind of like prove my metal, and then eventually got into Netflix for the first time with Drive to Survive, and yeah, just went on upwards from there until I got into feature documentary, which is what I do now.
Charles, how about you?
Yeah, for me, I started in a different career. I was in the music world back when I was much younger. I was a electronic music promoter and a graphic designer. I produced concerts, from small like 500 seaters up to like maybe 3 to 5,000 seat venues. Um, and I performed graphic design for a national client base in the States, different bands and different companies and ad agencies. Um, and I toured with various groups like LCD Sound System and big DJs like, Timo Moss, and I toured with Jay-Z as a video artist. And there just came a point along the way where I wanted my video work to have more of a lasting emotional effect on my viewers versus, I don't want to minimize it, but just as entertainment and then it's over and then I just do it again. I used to paint really cool stuff and that was fun, but I got to a point where I wanted something more substantive with my work. And I had moved out to Los Angeles from Chicago in pursuit of a music video career as a music video director. It was a logical progression for me, music and film together. But I went to an event produced annually by American cinema editors called Invisible Artists, Visible Art. And upon hearing the Oscar-nominated editors discuss their craft, it just really hit me right between the eyes. I was like, "Oh, that's where the film was made. That's like me, I'm a designer. I always have my clients speaking when working through me, and then when they leave, the creativity comes. And then the funnest part of editing for me is going from nothing to something. When people ask me, "What's your favorite aspect of the job?" Your favorite aspect of the craft, I will always say delivering the final cut. It's always the best. So yeah, that's kind of how I got into it. I moved out here, and I was lucky, as Nick said. Good fortune is definitely always a part of our journeys. I think you have to be ready for that fortune, and I think your effort kind of helps manifest some of those, quote unquote happy accidents, lucky moments. But I was very fortunate to meet people along the way. I worked for a really great television production company called World of Wonder on a lot of reality television programs from like, oh man, from like 2008 all the way to like 2012 or 2015, maybe even. super challenging stuff. It was always very difficult to turn that stuff into something. But I think that's where, I really cut my chops in that world. And then in 2018, I was fortunate enough to get a call to go work on the premiere season of 911 Lone Star for Fox. And I stayed with in that universe with that group for 5 seasons, which was just really wonderful. And today I've moved into other, nonfiction series, episodic programming like Welcome to Wrexham and um, Full Swing and social studies. I'm super fortunate. I really love the editorial process and really love the diverse body of work that I get, the opportunity to engage in. So I'm super fortunate and really happy about that.
You talked about luck, but also being ready for it. What kind of skills do you guys think that you have that made you ready for the jobs that you got, that you did well on, that people were impressed by your work on those jobs? Because different editors have different strengths. And I'm curious, what do you think yours happen to be?
For me, it's always what I did. It's always been exactly what I was doing right before I was doing whatever I'm going to do right now. And for me, my career as a graphic designer, it just gave me a lot of dexterity with the actual tool. Um, I think also being an independent creative working for a client base prepared me to know how to work with directors and producers, to know how to own the work enough to give my all to it and allow it to come through me, but yet have enough space for my client to actually serve my client's vision.
Yeah, I'm very much the same. I think, serving the client's vision, or the director or whatever is key to that. I mean, when I first started, I was not technically minded at all, and I was quite fearful of going into editing because I know it's quite a technical profession. But my storytelling, I felt was always really good, and I just persevered and just learned and dealt with not being very good at, like, back then, wiring a machine together or plugging in whatever. But I've always been quite good at telling stories and sort of very good with music and bringing out the emotions of a story and taking viewers on an emotional roller coaster. And that's kind of where, yeah, my skills came.
What kind of advice do you have for, an emerging editor or a person who's at that panel, Charles, who's thinking, well, this might be for me. I'm wondering how to get into it.
Well, there's two things. I mean, number one, I always say to editors, always be editing. Um, so just try your luck at it. Just go at it without any training out. Just get your hands on a computer, go online, look up a film. What was that film edited in? Get a copy of that software. Start getting some footage from somewhere. Take a movie that you've seen a bunch of times that you really like. Get the film, digitize it, chop it up, and then re-edit a trailer for that thriller that you really love and do a romantic comedy trailer out of it. You see if you can do that, play around. And then the other half of that is get in touch with, find mentors, the editors who cut the films that you really love, or other people that are interested in this craft as well, or the other entities that you'll find online, either remotely or locally, that center around this particular craft. Just get yourself involved with them, and lo and behold, you'll find yourself. You'll find out where the handles are. You'll find out where the head is and the tail, and then a few months, then a few years, you'll be surprised at how it starts to come out of you. I would hope.
Yeah, and also just pushing yourself out there. Don't be afraid to kind of like go and meet companies and people and just try to put yourself in the room. If you're not in the room, nobody's going to see you. And, make sure that they know that you're passionate about what you do and, you're keen to learn and always just, even if it's just doing whatever you can just to make sure that you're invaluable to the people that you're hoping will employ you one day.
Do you think with the move to more remote work in the last several years, it's getting harder to be able to put yourself in that position? Are you guys working remotely on your shows now? Are you going into the office? Are you working with a group of people in person, or what's it like?
I'm in a hybrid scenario on my current project. I work both from home and as well in the office.
Yeah, likewise. I try to get in as much as possible. I find that collaborating in a room with someone is just such a shorthand. I mean, so many decisions get made when you're working remotely, you know, on your own sometimes, and things can just be so much quicker. You can bounce an idea of someone or get someone to watch something back, and you kind of go, "Oh yeah, that's a good idea, but what about this?" That that process I think is really great. So yeah, remote working can be really tricky, but it's where we at right now.
Yeah, and Garrett, to the top half of your question, yes, I do feel that the remote workflow has made it more difficult to get into the room. The room doesn't even exist, a lot anymore. But and to Nick's point, there's a chemistry, there's an energy exchange that happens when we're all in the room together listening to a song or watching down a sequence or experiencing a film. The same way when you're in a living room and you're watching a sports game or a movie and you grab each other, oh my God, that exchange. I mean, you know what? But truth be told, we're doing pretty good with the whole remote thing. I mean, we're remote right now and we can laugh a bit. And I meet people in the tactile world and I'll say, hey, let's get together. And sure enough, so that too much time doesn't pass, I'll send them a Zoom link, and we'll just have a chat over Zoom and just me and that person. So I guess maybe we just, like Nick is saying, we just got to get accustomed to it. It's just a new way.
Are you able to work with apprentice editors and assistant editors in a way that you feel they are, sharing in your experience and sharing in your knowledge and in a kind of a mentor way? Or is there more of a separation than there used to be, or how are you finding that?
I've been working with a assistant editor on a few projects back to back now, Slajana, and she's amazing. I mean, she kind of fills in where my technical expertise aren't quite there sometimes, or like dealing with a lot of things which would be quite time consuming and tricky. And in fact, on this project I'm working on with her at the moment, she's actually, they we couldn't afford to have it run a second suite the entire time. So I was just like, hey, you can just come sit in my edit suite and we can work together. And that is so cool. I mean, I could just turn to her and I could say, what do you think of this? And show her some clips or whatever I'm doing, or ask her something. And she could see, my process and what I'm doing and how I go about it. So I feel like she's getting more from that as well by being in the room with me. So that's really great. But I guess, that's not always possible in every scenario. But yeah, it works for us.
And likewise, for me, I've adjusted and we work remotely. We speak a lot. We use platforms like Discord and Evercast, especially Discord. And I basically just turn, my workstation is one machine and my communication station, my laptop is another, and I can just hit a button, boop, she's on the screen or he's on the screen. We talk about stuff. We laugh, we screen material together, and I have gotten accustomed to it, and it does feel like we're in the room together. And then the rest of that, I do make it a point to meet up with all of my team out in the tactile world, whether it's just lunch or dinner, or as Nick said, if I invite Rob or if I invite them to my place or go to their place. So I always make it a point to connect with as many people as I'm working with as seems to make sense.
You've both worked on hugely successful documentary series, and I think that the post process on those shows is probably pretty interesting, especially when we compare it to a feature. It's a bigger arc. You've got episodes, of course. So as we talk about your clips and on your series, I'd love to know things like, are you working on more than one episode at a time? Are you sharing footage? Is there a producer who's got their eye on the whole arc? And how does that work? So Charles, why don't we jump into talking about working on Welcome to Wrexham?
Sure.
a beloved show. Um, what was the process like? You worked on the first season,
Yep.
and at what point did you join the series?
So we were still reeling from the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic, especially in the UK. And the material that we were working with had been shot even the previous year. So there are two different, completely different versions of the first season of Welcome to Wrexham that no one will see because of the extended amount of time that that series was in post-production. We were coming out of that pandemic and we were trying so hard to continue with some form of normalcy. So we were making a show. All the beautiful, that particular, the town itself of Wrexham is a major character in that series. And so all of the beautiful footage that you see of the town, of the townspeople, of the particular stadium, which I think that's the oldest or the second oldest football stadium on the planet. Um, there's all this footage where the streets were empty. That stadium was empty. People were still on lockdown. The teams were training in masks, and if someone got a little cough, they had to completely sequester themselves from the rest of the team. It was a completely different show with a lot of, score and a lot of imagination. You would hear voiceover and you would hear practicing and you would hear things, but you would see an empty field, or you'd see a big drone shot, or just one lonely person. What there was a great scene where we followed a player all the way from the football stadium back to their flat on the various different, trains that they used to get there. And everyone was sitting separately and he was walking by himself. And the producer and showrunner were there shooting that. And they were shooting it from a distance, yelling to him, okay, hold on, wait. They'd get to another spot. Okay, walk now. And they'd start shooting. I mean, so it was epic. But then as the world woke up, so did our show. People came into the material and just the energy just went through the roof. And so it wasn't a difficult decision to scrap the other first two versions of it and go with what we were working with. So yeah, it was definitely adventurous. It was challenging editorially. But I just felt very fortunate. We all felt very fortunate to be in that preliminary remote state. The fact that we were all doing what we loved and working at a time where, man, the world was really reeling from the gut punch that it had just taken. We were very fortunate and just really glad to give that show our all.
Can you tell us just a little bit about what the show's about for those who aren't familiar?
Oh yeah, Welcome to Wrexham in a nutshell is the story of two individuals who happen to be Hollywood actors and producers who fall in love with the notion of this football team in Wrexham because one of the employees that works for one of those actors constantly talks about football, constantly talks about Wrexham in Wales. And once that particular individual, Rob McElhenney, when that actor found out about the story behind that team, him being a storyteller, he was like, that sounds like an incredible story. And uh, his employee said, and it is. And then Rob McElhenney contacted a friend of his, Ryan Reynolds, and said, I got a great idea. And there it was born. Let's get into this. This is a Cinderella story. Let's infuse this town that has more belief and more sovereignty than we've ever seen. Let's infuse them with a little bit of support and let's see what happens. This could be an incredible comeback story. And lo and behold, it all literally happened. And everything you see in the series of Welcome to Wrexham, you watch a town get behind two people getting behind their team, trying to figure out what's the real motivation and if they're truly authentic in their effort, all for a team to just rise up. And you get to watch it in real time. And I don't want to give anything away. And no matter what you think is gonna happen, something different happens. So there you go. But man, it's a real great fun ride, and it's a deep dive directly into the heart of Welsh culture and into the culture of European football, and then into the culture of just living, which everyone can relate to. So really cool show. Really love it.
Awesome. Let's why don't you let's start watching a clip. Why don't you set up this clip?
Yeah, this clip. So this is at a time late in the first season. Our team, the Wrexham Reds, the Red Dragons, they're doing well. We have a chance to advance in the league, and as we've been keeping up with them, we're also learning the intricacies of Welsh football, the way it's structured, English football, the fact that other teams, that it's a pool, so other teams' wins and losses can affect your standing as well. So there's that component. We're headed with them to Dagenham and to Dagenham, this other town, and a lot rides on Wrexham winning this game. If they win this game, they advance toward a real shot at leveling up their promotion, at advancing their promotion, and that changes everything for the team financially and stature wise. So it's a really important game. I think what happens is their energy is down because while they're playing, one of the other teams that's neck and neck with them, Stockport, scores a goal against their adversary. If Stockport wins their game, it will topple our chances to advance. And I think that has the team on the field while they're playing a bit lack, a bit lethargic, or, a bit bummed out. So I think that's where we enter this clip.
And then on the couch watching the match is one of the American owners of the team, Rob, with one of his children. And so he's got a lot riding on it too.
He's got everything riding on it. And he's a part of the vehicle that's helping teach the American viewer how football really works. He's literally watching the Wrexham game on one screen, and then he's got Stockport game on another laptop screen because he's got to keep track of both.
If in a game of football all the players looked as if they had no energy at all, there's some reason for that.
Yeah, but does enough to punch it away. And that's it. Half time, 0-0.
That magical ending Wrexham wanted, not quite going their way.
Shit.
70% It's 70% for me, right? So two things. As a team, right, listen, we're coming off this fucking pitch in the second half and we're gonna fucking put a shift in. We're gonna work our fucking bollocks off, right, out of possession, and then we're gonna play.
You're fucking tired. You're not pushing yourself hard enough. Football's fucking hard. That's what it is. If we have to carry you off the pitch after 98 minutes, we will carry off the pitch.
Get up against the man you're playing against and be better than him. Be better than the centre-half, Ollie. You and Mulls. Get in the fucking box when the cross is done. Be better than the man you're playing against, and you'll win this fucking game. All right?
Come on,
fucking
boys.
Come on,
Come
then.
on, come on.
If Mulls and Ollie are closing, we back them up.
We do. We love you, Wrexham. We do. We love you, Wrexham. We do. Oh, Wrexham, we love you.
Oh, Wrexham!
We're getting JJ. Good trick. Give it.
Jeez. They're just all over us.
Rice is in on his right foot, he hits it, he's in. And that's been coming. And with 55 minutes on the clock.
Dagenham battered us, basically, you know.
The back post, McCallum, goal.
It wasn't good enough, we all knew it wasn't good enough.
To McCallum, lays off to Robinson. 3-0. And it just gets worse and worse for Wrexham.
Fuck!
Oh, that's good.
Rob,
Nice way to end it.
he's a genius on so many levels. Yeah, man, just fun clip, like editing Wrexham for me. Just the first time I engaged this community through this material, the word is tribal. That's the word I always use. Just the way they talk, and the amount of passion they have for everything they do, I feel like I'm cutting some like 16th century, like, you know, band of warriors, kind of a thing. And we approached the matches like war sequences, basically, like battle sequences. Um, I think of watching a game. What's on my mind is I always want to give you more than what meets the eye, the context that you would never be able to get from just watching the match. Um, the overcranked cinematography just really helps you really sink into it, and intercutting that at the right times helps with the pacing to give you a more emotional ride. Um, and then giving you the context in the locker room, it was really important for you to see that at this level of professionalism, there's not a lot of technical talk going on. We've done that already in practice. There's no time to talk about that now. Right now, it's all about attitude. It's about commitment. It's about mindset. And as storytellers, that's what's universal, especially in sports documentary. For me, sports are always a microcosm of life. I don't see too much of a difference between the hunter and the athlete. Everything's riding on this, and I approach it that way in the cut. And I think lastly, one of the greatest things about Wrexham is it's a team of editors, and a lot of us touch a lot of different parts of episodes. And that episode that you watched, some of the parts of some of those matches, a couple of the other editors touched those too, or they came from a previous cut. And it's always just magical because once you get a piece from another editor, you're like, oh wow, how do you do? Oh, I didn't think of that. Or I might have scored something with, some really charged up music. Someone might take the same exact edit that I had, they score it with some strings, some classical strings. And then I see it comes back to me again. And I'm like, ooh, those strings, that will affect what I'm going to do now next. So it was such a collaborative scenario. And I think everyone's offerings, on the edit team there, we all elevated everyone's work, and that everyone got to benefit from that. The viewers, especially at the end of the day, they got a really great series because of that.
Why is there all that sharing? Why isn't an editor just assigned episode 15 and somebody 16 and somebody 17 on that show?
Well, on that show, it's because it was evolving. It was season one. We were figuring a lot of things out. Deadlines would move backward and forward. So all of a sudden you're like, hey, 115, we got to get that out next week. Everybody stop. Everyone goes to 115 to help. Or also it happens because one of the editors, does something. I might do something in like, a dialogue scene that everyone loves so much. Then they're like, oh, have Charles cut this next dialogue scene. Remember that thing that you did? Here, cut another one. Or that thing you did in the match. Let's make that a thing, guys. I kind of like that. Yeah, okay, we'll do that. So that kind of collaboration kind of happens. I mean, there is, along the way, we are assigned an episode. And so that all of this collaboration and all these moving parts have a channel and a sequence to get into, we do have that kind of hierarchy. Hey, this is Charles's episode. So one head will kind of own the episode, albeit other people may contribute or not. So I hope that answers your
question. Nick, does that reflect your experience on Drive to Survive?
Yeah, very much so. I mean, there's also kind of stories that just totally get moved, like maybe someone's, particular racer's backstory was used in a different episode, and then all of a sudden that driver's story becomes more prevalent in another, and then they'll go, all right, well, let's just take that, and it looks better in this one. to to raise the stakes for that driver. And I mean, we're dealing with massive. I think we call them like sync maps, and they take every single camera and audio channel and they just stack them into one big timeline. And so those are quite hefty to deal with. And so sometimes we'll, if the turnaround's really quick, we'll split that up between two editors, and then you'll deal with, if there's more than one race in an episode, you deal with that race and you deal with that race. So yeah, it's a massive collaboration.
So it's a sync map, meaning like if we can just start watching the race right here, and here's every camera and every sound that we had going at the time.
Everything,
so you can look around.
Exactly. Yeah.
We have the same thing.
Right. And you guys call it sync maps as well?
I don't know. I don't remember what we call those timelines. We might call them masters.
Yeah.
I think they call them masters on Wrexham. It's been a minute now since I've been on Wrexham.
Yeah.
It gets tricky though when you've got like that slow-mo footage and that kind of doesn't map to that, and there's a lot of it, but you kind of have it placed in anyway, just kind of like give you a
yeah. So that's a good point Nick brings up. The timing is off on that. So the way we did it was the overcranked footage is framed up, sped up, for lack of a better term, so that it's all in sync, but we know that this track is overcranked. So if you want slow-mo of this moment, you go to when he goes like that, and then the track below, he finally, it slows down, So it was a method to the madness that we worked out for sure.
Yeah. I mean, it's very daunting when you look at those sync maps. I mean, they're massive.
Huge.
They're huge. I mean, you've got to scroll up and down and everything to get through them.
Yeah.
So it takes a certain skill to kind of like navigate all of that.
Yeah.
Charles, in that clip and in that series, sound design is a big part of it. How I know it's been a while since you worked on Wrexham, but on that one and in general, how involved do you get in the sound design and the rough cut?
100%.
You love it.
Not do I love it? Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
But no, we are not this. We are not. I've never cut a show where I'm cutting picture, and someone else is coming in doing all this incredible sound design, and someone else is coming in with ideas of score. No, I am temping everything. We are temping it all, and that's for two reasons, maybe more, but I know at least two reasons for me is. Number one, I need to see if it works anyway, myself, and then number two, we're, especially in, nonfiction work, we're kind of the beginning. You got a bunch of footage here. We're the first ones who really kind of craft the beginning narrative, structurally, like, I see where this thing is going. So everyone's kind of utilizing our temp, sound design, and score. Our first pass is what sets the template for everything else that happens, no matter how far or near that initial version, the final version becomes. So yeah, no, we're not super involved. We're actually doing all of the sound design and all the score. So I hope that answers that question. Nick's probably the same for him, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, for sure. I love it. It's my favorite. It's actually my favorite part of cutting, to be honest, is with the sound.
That's the fun.
It's the fun. It's where it comes to life. You can kind of pull things in, and even if it's just so you don't have to show this, you show what you're hearing. Sometimes you can show a sky and hear a car drive off, and you kind of that's telling a different story.
All right, let's shift gears a little bit, Nick. I want to shift to you and your work. And I want to talk a little bit about The Greatest Night in Pop. So this was a feature documentary. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what this film is about?
Most people should know the song "We Are the World," which was written by Michael Jackson and Lionel Richie. So yeah, it was a song to raise funds for the famine in Africa at the time. And we basically wanted to, it was the director Barney's vision to cut it like a heist movie. And so from the very outset, we kind of wanted it to be about assembling this crack team that could kind of like pull off the impossible, the heist being recorded, getting all these artists into one room, one night, and record this song in one go. And yeah, so we had lots of fun with all different kind of heist tropes as we kind of built this film. And you know, we introduced the tick and clock, and you know, the impossibility of what they were trying to achieve, and people being unreliable, or you know, conflict and all kinds of things. But basically, yeah, it was just a fun, nostalgic, kind of entertaining romp, and almost a love letter to Los Angeles at the same time. You know, we really kind of selected very carefully the type of archive that we wanted to use that reflected that period, and even in the way that we cut it and the way we treated that archive, we would have these long kind of like zoom ins into like a building or whatever, and you know, we kind of like hold on to that because it gave that authenticity of the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I mean, we had initially being promised that we would get all of the footage from the night, and you know, that was going to be very exciting, loads of cameras in there and stuff, and then that didn't turn out to be the case, and we got into the edit, and we didn't get as much as we initially thought we would. There was missing footage.
It was missing. It wasn't that they were holding it back. They just couldn't find it.
Honestly, for months and months, and you know, we tried every avenue to try to get this footage. We just could not find it. Maybe it's sitting in someone's basement somewhere. Who knows?
Had anything been done with the footage before?
It had been sort of, some of the footage had landed up on YouTube, so a lot of things people had seen before, but there was stuff that people had not seen before, which was great. And the most important thing that kind of pulled that whole film together was the audio that was recorded by the Time magazine, David Breskin. He had a dictaphone and he was following Quincy at the time, and so he was recording all his phone calls, all the logistic meetings, and he was in the room at the time they were recording. Because even though even the footage we did have didn't always have the actual audio to it, it would be connected to the sound room or whatever, or you'd have the backing track playing through it, you know. So where he was, he had his dictaphone in and around the room, walking around, and he was picking up all these conversations and all these amazing moments, which we then had to kind of like sync and pair to the footage. And that's really where most of the sort of amazing behind the scenes moments came from.
Great. So you had all this great footage, not all of the great footage you had hoped to get, but still a ton of great footage as we see in the movie. But what were some of the challenges? You know, you started describing some of what you didn't have, but I just want to set up this clip so that as we're watching it, we understand kind of the challenges you had to overcome for things you were missing.
You had a lot of amazing sound bites and a lot of amazing shots, but they didn't always align. And so you had to be really, really creative in how you sort of piece those together to create a cohesive scene. And yeah, so I just ended up cataloging everything down, you know, breaking this down into this chat or chat about golf, you know, and it was, I think, Springsteen and one of the other guys, you know, I mean, they were just chatting about golf, and we were like, okay, cool, that might be useful, so put that there. And yeah, so we just kind of built up a whole catalog of different fights and then found ways to marry it up.
Let's start with Heist, and I also want to address the reenactments and how you guys decided to handle that. Obviously, there's going to be stories about things that weren't filmed, and you had to figure out how to show that.
Yeah, the logistics meeting. I mean, there was a mic in the room, like I say, but there was no footage of that. So we did some recreations based on the audio, and just to put people in the room, so it's felt like a more immersive, unfolding narrative. And you know, so we shot it all on Betacams, I think, which is the cameras that they were using at the time. And so it had that real sort of authentic look to it too. So it bedded in really well without it looking, you know, too much like just drama.
And throughout the show, the film, I noticed you kept probably the same aspect ratio that those Betacams were in. Even in the modern day interviews, we still have this, I don't know if it's 1:6:6 or whatever the ratio is, right?
Yeah, correct. Yeah, we filmed it that way. It was all. It wasn't
Right.
like letterboxed afterwards. We filmed it all with that intention.
Back then, the American Music Awards was a big fucking deal. I had Diana Ross and Hall & Oates. I mean, I had these people booked. Prince was, Madonna was, and Cyndi Lauper.
Currently going after Hall & Oates.
And Ken Cragen called me. He said, I want to put together a group of superstars, as many people as I can get to be on the song. But to get these people in a room recording together, it had to be the night of the AMAs. There was no choice.
It was less than a month. We were looking at the top charts and saying who could sell the most records.
Please welcome His Royal Badness, Prince.
Prince was one that they wanted badly. He had a Purple Rain.
What are you looking forward to seeing in this film?
Prince.
Anything more specific than that?
Prince.
And anything else?
Prince.
The fun clip.
It's fun. And there's even another source there at the end, whatever, like Entertainment Tonight. So you also had some, I guess, TV show journalism footage as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, we had footage from everywhere to just build it up. But yeah, I mean, like that phone call with Ken Cragen, you can see that's some recreations that we did. But it's an original, it's an authentic phone call that he was having at the time, which was great to have. It's unbelievable. And then you can kind of see some of the heist elements in there, which it's even just with almost like the crime board and putting up like the photos of the artists as they kind of signing them up or hoping to get them signed up, and it introduces the idea of it's one night, the American Music Awards. This is it. It has to be this night. Otherwise it's not going to happen. And also introducing the creative tension around the Prince story, because I don't know if everyone's seen it, but he's a tricky one to pin down, and the dynamic between what happens on the night and all is seeded from that moment and kind of pays off later.
That Motorola phone, we're on the back of the guy's head. He's got the brick phone.
Yeah.
Did you guys shoot that?
Yeah, who shot that?
Bro, that looks so real.
Yeah, no, it's great.
It is so good. I thought that was real footage from back then because you shot it with those beta cams.
That's right, yeah.
I want to make a short set in 1985 just for that reason now, just so I could go use those cameras. That's so smart. The Greatest Night in Pop's one of my favorite films because that was my era. I was around then, and those are all some of my favorite artists growing up, and you got them all in a single room, and now someone made a movie where I got to be in the room, which is crazy. So man, it's really great that you just shared that brick phone. I just thought the way you cut it was cool. Like, oh, they used that little piece of footage. Who knows who that really is? No, Charles, bro, we shot that. It's so good. And that's at the heart of everything we do. It's the ideas, man, and all the things that we have now, whether it's an iPhone or a beta cam, they're tools, if you got a big, arc light, or if you just got a big piece of tinfoil and you're bouncing the sun in there, just do what you got to do. It's crazy.
I know. I felt similar. It was like I'd seen that music video, a billion times, right, when it came out, and always wondered what all those people were thinking and doing. And here's a movie that Nick made to tell me all about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was super fun to make it.
It's fun to see some of the quirky things that the people in the room were doing. And so that sets up this next clip. We're calling it the breaks, because what did they do when they were taking breaks throughout the night? So do you want to set this clip up a little bit?
There's a lot of attention that we build up over the course of the night, and there's a lot going on, and there's infighting, and they're like having meltdowns, and so this comes I think after there was this kind of like this moment where Stevie Wonder wants to introduce these new lyrics into the song, And everybody's like, what? And it's like in Swahili, and everyone's like shooting him down, and he feels real bad about it. And then they all come together, which is kind of like the cool thing about the night, and how they all sort of came together, and they go like, yeah, okay, cool, we're gonna do this. And so once that happens, they all sing Harry Belafonte's song Deo, and then they have this big joyous moment, and then we just break out into like a moment between all the intensity of what's going on. And that's it.
In between the breaks, Ray would play another version of We Are the World, the gospel version, the Georgia on My Mind version. And so at that moment, I overhear Ray and Stevie talking. And Ray says, honey, I got to go to the bathroom. And then Stevie said, I'll show you where it is.
And he just grabbed him by the arm, and they walk, and everybody said, the blind really is leading the blind, and we all just burst and laugh. People were hungry.
Chicken and waffles, smothered chicken and waffles.
Everybody was ordering chicken and waffle, from Roscoe. And I've never seen anybody who eats chicken better than Lionel Richie. He eats the last little piece of bone, he sucks it up, and he eats and he puts them on top of the other one. So when he finishes, he has all these little bones all layered properly. And I said, man, brother, there's nobody can eat chicken better than you.
Classic.
Yeah, I love this. I imagine, you mentioned you're making notes as you're going, like Springsteen talking about golf. This is maybe an example of where all that work ahead of time pays off. You're like, I don't know where I'm going to use this eating chicken and lining it up bit, but here's a section now where it's not moving the story forward, but it's giving us more of a vibe of what's going on in the room.
It also shows, that they're just people, right? They get
Yeah.
hot, they get hungry, they get angry, they get whatever, and but yeah, it was just a chance to show some of the fun stuff that was going on at the night that wasn't just about the song. And you wouldn't think that a story about Lionel Richie and how he eats his chicken and lays all the bones down is going to make the cut, but it felt right. It felt like a good moment to just have a bit of fun and comedy.
Right. Don't we have a clip somewhere of Tina saying fish burger?
Yeah, that was in there. Yeah,
it was in there.
Let's find that one when you guys, as you're editing, you're like, where is that fish burger line?
Yep.
I mean, I had sequences just with laughing or just with crowd noises, and there's a lot of layers to that in the audio too, which you probably wouldn't even notice. But to create that whole sort of ambience of the sound and everything in the room, it took some craft.
And that's a prime example of what we talk about when we say visible artists and visible art. The laughter and the background image, what's going on in the background. Nic has layered all that, not to create the moment, but to recreate the moment and add emotion to the moment. And when it's done right, you have no idea. You don't know that there's one layer or 12 layers back there. You just laugh, or you're just concerned, whatever the way you're supposed to feel. So it's a crazy craft, man. And I'm not going to say it's thankless, but you definitely have to, I guess for all editors, I would always say, if you ever get lucky enough to sit in the back of a theater or the back of a room while people take in your cut, it can be one of the most informative, rewarding, or terrifying moments in your life.
I don't know if you guys do test screenings, but
yeah,
they're so informative. You get people from all walks of life can watch, and we just kind of get their vibe in the room, give them a questionnaire, and have some sort of key questions which can help us kind of direct how we you know, what's interesting, how they're finding it, what's the demographic here, and yeah, we take that into the edit and then help that to hone the cut too. So yeah, definitely.
The test screenings are commonly associated with feature films. How is it when you're working on a series and you're working on a series, a TV show? Like, do you do test screenings? Do you ever get people outside of the edit room to take a look and tell you what they think?
Yeah, everywhere from a test screening of 4 or 5 people, when you grab your producer and 2 or 3 other editors and 2 or 3 assistants and, you know, the post PA, come on, we're gonna watch this down, and you bring all 12 of those people or 8 or 9 of those people into a room, all the way up to you know, arranging a screening. On all the projects I've been on, we've done that.
I've mostly done it on features. I think when I've been working on series, it's such a fast turnaround a lot of the time, and you know, you're just moving through it and you're getting notes and you're working, just trying to get the best show up in time. And but yeah, we've done it a lot on feature documentaries that I've worked on, and they're always tremendously useful. In fact, on the Twister, which we may show a few clips from later, we intentionally got like a much younger audience to do the test screening for us. In fact, we got old and young, but mostly we were most interested in hearing what young people had to think about it, because it was a young cast, teenage cast.
When you're about to push play and watch a cut down, watch down a cut, do you try to get yourself in a certain frame of mind to be receptive to what you're about to watch? You've been spending all this time on all the minutia, and now you're going to watch the whole film or the whole episode. Is there a way you talk to yourself before you push play?
For me, no. My version of that is I probably watch things down over and over. In other words, when I'm cutting and I watch something down, no, I don't pause and shake myself out and, you know, reset. But it's when I watch it again in the morning, or it's when I watch it again after I've walked away for a while. Maybe I went to dinner, maybe I had to go to soccer practice. Then when I come back, now I'm fresh. But especially that next morning one, that one's a rough one. That's what I'm just like, what? Fucking not working.
What was I thinking?
I'm like, yeah, this is slow, and this is the wrong score. This shouldn't even have score. What is this back? There's too much, whatever. You know, there's stuff going on.
I'm actually, when I watch stuff, I find it's a different feeling when you're watching it with other people in the room, always. And you know, if I've cut something that is a very emotional scene, and there was one situation with that when I was cutting the Twister, and you know, I was virtually in tears just cutting it because it was so emotional. And when I'd been cutting it with my headphones on, and I said to the director, Alex, like, listen, I want you to watch this down, but I'm going to leave the room and just let you watch it alone, so that I don't affect the way that you feel when you're watching it. And because I knew I was going to be quite emotional watching it. And when I came back in, she was in tears. She was crying.
Right.
Yeah, awesome. So yeah, when it comes to watching things, I find for me, I'm quite good at having like creative amnesia in a way, where I can just watch something back and you know, it still feels fresh. Sometimes, not always. But yeah, having the energy of someone in the room makes a big difference.
I find that just even having another person in the room, I'm kind of watching it through their eyes. I'm like, oh God, I didn't see that. I'm sure they saw it, and that seems to really help. So since you brought up Twister, let's move on to that. I think we can we have a trailer, so let's just jump in and just show the trailer, and then we can talk about it and show a couple clips.
To think that we were all just celebrating life 24 hours prior to the worst thing that could happen.
This is now a confirmed tornado.
The high school graduation, that is pretty much in the path of this storm.
That Sunday, the weather was beautiful.
After graduation, there's a big party that's thrown. My dad texted me and said there's a tornado. 2 minutes later, it gets dark within like seconds.
I'll never forget the noise that made it. It was like so loud.
It was a monster, and it was catching up to us.
Where do we go?
Oh my God.
The tornado was like right there, pretty much about to touch us.
I looked up, and I saw clear blue sky. We were in the eye, totally surrounded by chaos.
I could feel my body lift off the ground. I don't know how long I can hang on for.
Accepted my fate. I was flying inside the tornado.
All right, and from what you've been telling me, I haven't seen the show yet, but that trailer is not just a bunch of trailer sound effects and crazy footage. It sounds like the film itself is really reflective of your work and the way you guys assembled the film. Can you tell us about that?
It's basically it from the outset. The idea is that at the time there were all these end of the world prophecies, and a lot of the teenagers were sort of really feeling like they mentioned, we felt like we were the class of the apocalypse almost. And so the day before high school graduation, a lot of these folk had end of the world parties because they were expecting, there was one prediction that the end of the world would be the next day. And so one of our cast members wakes up in the morning with a massive hangover and goes outside and sees this huge cloud and goes, wow, let's go check that out, so yeah, we've got it's a really young, all our characters are teenagers at the time, pretty much. And yes, it's a young cast. And so we always sort of went into it kind of thinking this might be something like a Twister meets Stranger Things kind of story, and we wanted to cut it like a movie. And we used all the archive in a very sort of unfolding as it's happening. You're in it with our cast, and it's some of it's pretty extraordinary. I mean, some of them were filming while they were inside a tornado. So it's quite intense. We when we were doing early viewings with people, we would say, just be prepared because this might trigger you a bit because it's pretty full on at times.
The piece of footage in the trailer when she looks up into the eye of the tornado, what's the source of that particular piece of footage? Is that CGI? Is that?
Yeah, so that's VFX. Yeah.
Okay. Wow, that was wicked.
Yeah, we used we had a great VFX company, Lux Eterna, and we had some bespoke visuals made for us because we wanted it elevated as well. We shot some of the footage on a Phantom camera at about 10,000 frames a second or something, and just recreating the idea of these people getting sucked up into the tornado, sucked in a car.
Yeah.
But they're very stylistic. They're very visually stylistic. So we're not trying to show you like, oh, this is what it looked like. It's kind of like a heightened visual experience that we throw in there.
Not what it looks like, but this is how it feels.
Yeah. I mean, we were quite careful with how we used the effects. We didn't want people to think, oh, this is real. So it was always quite heightened in the way it looked.
Do you want to talk us into the high school practice field clip and why you chose that?
So this clip's in the aftermath of the tornado. So Mac and Kaylee, they were the amateur storm chasers who went up to take a look at this crazy looking cloud and then ended up running from the Twister. And they seek refuge in a liquor store, and then when they come up, there's nothing. It's all gone. Everything's just flattened, and there's lightning striking the ground around them. and they kind of realize like, damn, we need to go find our families and make sure they're okay, you know, and they've got to now try and get across town to head to where their families are, and this clip is on their way to try find their families.
There was a field. I remember Kaylee getting stuck in the field. She gave it some gas, and I remember us sinking a little bit. And me and Eric said, "It's fine, we'll get out and push." And we jumped out of the truck. Me and Eric looked at each other and said, "Dude, what field is in the middle of Joplin? What field? Where are we at? Why are we in a field?" And then we looked and realized that we were in the high school practice field, like the high school we went to. We were there. We couldn't even recognize that we were where we went to school at.
Yeah, so I mean, the school is like a character in this film. You know, the graduation's taking place there on the day that the tornado hits, and in fact, you know, during the ceremony, all the people are told to turn off their phones so that they, you know, don't interrupt proceedings. So they had no idea what was going on, and you know, they step outside of graduation, and the tornado sirens are going off, and so yeah, the school gets totally destroyed. It was right in the middle of the twister, and you know, these guys, as they say, they went to school there, and seeing it was just a massive reality check of, wow, that's our childhood gone, you know. So yeah, we had I think about over 6,000 clips of archive in the project that we used. It was a lot, and we, you know, so sifting through all of that and trying to find representative archive that you could use, because we didn't have it. They didn't film that. We didn't have the filmed footage of everything that you see, but so we use archive to represent what they're seeing and what's happening to them. So I think that may have been some UGC or some storm chasers that filmed that and actually just happened to get stuck in the mud in the practice field in front of the high school. And you know, when we found that clip and put it to the story, it's just
so perfect,
incredible, perfect. Yeah, it's great. And following that scene, we go into like a whole sort of montage piece of the high school using all the CCTV footage as the tornado hits it, and just windows exploding, and you know, everything just getting ripped apart. And with in that moment, we kind of pull away from, in sound design, we kind of pull back on it. The music sort of comes more forefront, and then I'll bring in some audio clips, even from the high school graduation speech, and kind of have that sort of reverbing in the background of, you know, saying something like, you know, we've been waiting our whole lives for something big to happen, and today is that something big, and then the whole school just goes.
I mean, this seems like such a great example of a film that is, you've got audio and video, and you're just matching up what you can. Like you say, you didn't have the footage of what this guy's talking. They weren't filming necessarily when this was happening. So you were pulling from all over the place and had so much creative freedom to assemble those elements. And it seems like there must have been a lot of sound work in this one also.
Yeah, sound work on this was amazing. I mean, you know, I just kept layering and layering and layering and bringing in new sound designs, new sound effects. And you know, we had an amazing sound editor, Steve Speed, who came on board very early on, which isn't normal. You know, in normal situations, you know, they come in pretty much when the film comes to their suite, and they've got to start building the sound design on it. But we started collaborating very early on, and he was building soundscapes for me, and we were sharing sound effects and everything. So yeah, sound was a big part of this film.
All right, so Nick, we have time for one more clip from the Twister. We're going to show the clip number 4. It's called "It's on Us." Do you want to set this clip up?
Yeah, so yeah, this is a clip we really went to town on with the sound design. There's heaps of it going on. this is the actual moment where, you know, our cast have basically hopefully found shelter, and they know it's coming. You know, we kind of cut it like a monster movie in a way. It's not a disaster movie. It's a monster movie. The tornado is the monster, and it had like it made a sound like a very sort of guttural, animalistic kind of sound. But people also referred to it a bit like a freight train. And nailing what that sound actually would sound like took quite a bit of time, and mixing a lot of different sounds together and reverbing them and pushing them around. Yeah, so I think, you know, I think this clip really sort of shows off some of the sound design that we managed to put together.
You can feel the pressure in your ears change.
Guys, it's on us, it's on.
And then the largest pop.
It sounded like.
And the next thing you know, everything went.
Yeah, that's incredible. What kind of in the sound design, I want to say what kind of authenticity there was. Obviously, these weren't recorded on the day of, but how do you find sound? You know, how do you find sound effects that are going to work?
We're looking at the environment that they're in. So I mean, being in the liquor store, that's the clinking bottles, and you know, they talk about the concrete starting to actually crumble. So there's crumbling in there. The tinnitus sound, you know, these are sounds we bring into it, but we're going off the explanation of what they were explaining, they were hearing at the time. And what other, and I even sort of found these crazy kind of clips on YouTube where, you know, a lady had gone in with a mic and was doing like massaging and scratching it and doing all weird stuff to it, and just made all these weird sounds.
ASM.
And like really high, you know, highly, I don't think the word, but you know, it's just very, very, I can't put a word on it, but you know, these things kind of like all built into like this crazy sound design. And then the authentic sounds is when it hits and it all explodes through, and you hear that sort of screeching sound. It's almost like a sucking, screaming sound. That is the actual authentic audio that was captured on their phone.
All right. Well, I'm sure there's more we can talk about with the Twister. If there's anything else you'd like to say before we move on, just for reasons of time, about it.
I think the characters and the cast were everything in that, you know, and they'd been through so much going through that tornado. And we just wanted to respect that, and you know how much they'd been through, and you know, a lot of them have mentioned that they may, you know, suffer from PTSD from it, and can be triggered quite easily, you know, by certain sounds. And yeah, so this was just a tribute really to kind of show that through all of this, you know, you can find yourself or become a stronger person and come together and rebuild and build community up again. So, yeah.
Right. So it seems like your job was really, like you say, to honor their experience, honor their emotional journey, honor where they were that day, where they're at now, and really communicate that to us.
Yeah, exactly that. I mean, it's a very emotive film, I think. And, you know, we take you on a very emotional experience, and I think by the end of it, you'll feel these characters' emotions and their journey and everything that they've been through in a slightly sort of cathartic moment at the end, when they're all in nature and they come to terms with the experiences and how it's changed them.
You know, it's interesting too. It's one of the things I like about Netflix that network in particular, I know from other filmmakers and other projects of, that I'm close to, that they'll say things like what, to what Nick is talking about, honoring the authenticity to their experience. But at the same time, we, as editors, we're here to create something that's truly engaging. Um, dare I say the word entertaining, because I don't want to cheapen anything. But when you're in that edit chair, it's our job to serve, especially in documentary work. We're here to serve the authenticity of the characters and the experience. Unlike reality, we don't put words in people's mouths. We may help the scenario along, but we have to maintain basically journalistic integrity with this material. But underneath it all, you know, we're searching for sound effects, and we're, collaborating with VFX artists to create an experience for you, the viewer. But still, like he said, still honoring story, still allowing you to learn something, have a takeaway. But when you get to dinner and start talking about it, it's because you were riveted. And if we haven't done that, we may have missed you. And I know that Netflix, even with Full Swing, it's the same. It was the same deal. It's a sports thing. There's a lot of access, but are you not entertained? We, we must entertain you.
Well, Charles, it's like you set up the perfect segue to talk about Full Swing and the episode one of the episodes you cut that we're going to talk about here. And this happened when I watched this episode. I went away and talked about this clip that we're going to show to my wife and told her how amazing it was and how emotionally packed it was. So why don't you tell us what Full Swing is, and then we'll talk about the clip and show it.
Full Swing is incredible. It's an incredible sports documentary series on the world of golf, professional golfers, and it's produced by a company, Box to Box Media, out of London, same company that produced the Knicks series, Drive to Survive. And it's the third season that I got on, so we're not here, unlike when I worked on season 1 of Wrexham, we're not here looking for it. And the beauty of that, they're all beautiful scenarios. When you're working on season 1, we're trying to make it, we're trying to figure it out. When you're on the third or fourth or fifth season, it's perfecting it. It's outdoing what we've done previously already. And so that was the challenge here. And the producers and we all talk about it a lot. It's not a golf show. It's a human stories show. It's a show about challenge and overcoming and identity and digging in and perseverance. Golf just happens to be the medium. And then one of the other challenges with Full Swing is, I know when I grew up as a kid, Saturday morning when golf came on, I got a chance to take a nap. I mean, that announcer would just lull me right to sleep. But we know what's at stake for these golfers. There's so much happening in their minds. The sport is in my opinion now, it's like this intersection between physics and strategy and athleticism. How do I convey that experience on the screen, audibly and visually, for the viewer, so that the voice, the sound of that announcer doesn't put them to sleep, but yet completely narrates what's happening and is even more engaging. So that's how we approached it editorially. And it was a really, really fun series because Full Swing gives you a ton of access into the private and professional lives of people who generally would never allow that kind of access. These are their wives and their children. They're professionals. They don't let the sport of golf traditionally has never allowed cameras and things like that in locker rooms. Golfers themselves, you don't take your phone out, you don't take pictures. There's just unwritten laws, and this breaks all of those laws. So a lot of respect for the golfers that allowed the cameras into those sacred areas, and into their homes. And Gary Woodland, one of the two main athletes in the episode that I cut, just was an awesome person. His wife is incredible. His kids are incredible. And he just really opened the door and just gave us full access to everything. So for viewers, it's going to be like when they're done, they're just like, man, I want to try some golf, but what they're really saying is, I get it. I feel that too. That happens to me too. Uh, I'm gonna go open that other business, or I'm gonna take my wife out to dinner tonight because I'm actually lucky to have her by my side. That kind of stuff is what we hope that you was the takeaway from Full Swing.
Let's watch the opening of the episode you cut. So this is the episode 6 in the 3rd season. So presumably we know these characters already, or these participants.
Yeah, this is episode 306 featuring Gary Woodland from Kansas, USA. He won the US Open in 2019. And Justin Rose from the UK, very well-to-do British golfer. So yeah, I wasn't in the know of golf, but yes, these are very well-known golfers that anchor this episode.
Do you remember where to go?
Oh, sorry, Ben.
Thanks.
Hi. Well, how are you? Checking in?
Last name.
Woodland.
Hopefully you go back soon.
I know. Hurry up and wait.
Yeah. Fun times.
Woodland? Do you have any medication allergies?
No.
And what part of the body are we doing an MRI on?
Brain.
Okay. Your items in there.
Have you ever had brain surgery?
Yeah.
Okay. And any bone or joint replacement, pins, screws, plates, wires, rods?
Plates and screws in the head.
Okay. You had MRIs before, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
a lot.
Go ahead and go in.
Physically, I can do everything. It's just mentally, they're like, you're not gonna want to do it because it's too much. And I'm like, I can do anything. I'll be fine. I'm fine. And they were right. They're experts for a reason. And it's been hard, but all I ever know is to play.
Gary Woodland in his first event back since brain surgery last September.
Everybody loves a comeback story. As sports fans, we're drawn to the struggle or the overcoming of the struggle.
It's just a victory that Woodland is even out here.
We're drawn to the fight, whether that's against illness or injury or just time.
Justin Rose in his 6th Ryder Cup.
That's what makes sports so exciting. You never really know who's out and who's got one more left in them.
Gary Woodland has won the U.S. Open.
The beauty of sports is not in the athletes making victory look easy, but overcoming adversity, because we all struggle. Being able to watch our heroes overcome those struggles, that's what we connect to. That is what is so incredibly powerful. It connects us to our own humanity.
Golf's, it's like life. It's not easy. It's hard. I don't think I realized how much I loved the game until it was taken away from me. I'm out here fighting every day to overcome this and hoping to feel better and hoping that today's the day.
So much happening in, an open, a cold open. setting tone, seeding narratives, introducing characters, introducing context, sensationalizing, heightening things, just setting all the crumbs so that you can get into the series, into the episode. You know, there's a lot of pieces in there for sure. I mean, even choosing, you hear some big life arc things. Oh, golf is like life. It's not easy. And then you hear her. I mean, in this day and age, at this time, we're cutting this, politics are a big deal and diversity is on the table. The game of golf is more diversified now than ever before, racially, culturally, socioeconomically. We reflected that as well, so even just the quick cuts of watching our heroes traverse challenge, from Tiger Woods to all those different players, they're touching people in completely different ways. It's a super, just watching that back now, I'm just like, wow, there's a lot going on in that opening sequence.
There is a lot. And even if we just take the very beginning of it, I appreciated this time how quiet it is. There's no music. We hear the ambient tone of, I don't know, there's like a clicking, maybe it's their walking or the sound of their clothes moving or something. And it's just pulling me in, and you're releasing information, almost every other shot, there's something new. And he gets asked about the MRI and he says, yes, I've had it on my brain, and it pulls us in even more.
It's the power of the jump cut, what I call the page turn, the page has got to be turning. Look, I could follow you into a hospital with a camera, which is all that's happening. There's a camera behind them. But the jump cut is powerful. I've told people lots of times, editing nonfiction is, we're just removing all the boring parts. We're just sucking the air out of your day. So the only part of the day we see is when you tripped, when you fell, when you got the Band-Aid, when you yelled, and then when your wife came home, when you hugged her. We just sucked everything else out. You're like, oh, wow, that was crazy, But the jump cuts, the silence, we don't want anything to get in your way of getting into Gary's head. We cut to her, his wife, sitting there. I don't care what sport you're in, what's going on. We've all been to the hospital. We know what the heck's going on. We don't really know what he's dealing with yet. And then the word brain comes up. And we're like, oh. And then there's the doctor who always speaks to you very candidly and nonchalantly about some really heavy stuff. So have you ever had plates and screws? Okay, plates and screws. Oh, you have? Okay. So there's all that. And you're just supposed to be sitting there like, and then when you're completely in it, what does he say? All I know is to play. Oh, that's right. It's a sports doc. I forgot.
It's about golf.
I forgot. I was like, oh, wait, it's about
Yeah.
golf. So, and that's all intentional. It's all strategic. Yeah, it's, and and I'm not going to take all the credit. I work with incredible story producer, two of them. My co-EP, comes in. Other editors on the team chime in, and again, in nonfiction, you don't always get someone in front of the camera that's that, captivating. And like even Nic's series, The Twister, I mean, those people in front of the camera, they gave it up. Everyone doesn't always do that in nonfiction. They're not actors, so we were very fortunate with that.
You mentioned story producer. Can you guys talk about how you work with story producers when you're working on a TV series?
So on features, most recently, I've worked directly with the director. But so on Drive to Survive and the surfing series, Make or Break, they are so helpful. I mean, we were so busy, kind of just wrangling of like so much material and music and everything, story. And so they just help us kind of really find those key bits that help what we're trying to achieve with a scene, and also just keeping all the noise out of the room. You know, a lot of people want your attention and need to hear what you think about this and that. And you know, when you're cutting, you kind of get into a flow state, and that could be when you interrupt that flow state, you kind of you lose all your momentum, and you know, so they kind of also they protect you a bit, I think, you know, so you get the job done. But
Yeah.
they're working hand in hand with you, developing the story, and we're working to time frames, timelines, and making sure that we achieve it.
If it were an operating room and the editor were a surgeon, you know, your story producer would be right there, you know, handing instruments, suggesting instruments. Are you sure you want to use that? But, you know, it's a good idea. Let's use that instead. Offering different perspective on the material, fresh eyes. And to Nick's point, we're in a flow state, which sometimes for me can only happen sometimes in the evenings. And while I'm in a flow state in the evening, my story producer's in a flow state somewhere else, writing, and I'm cutting. And in the morning, you know, he or she's like, you know, I was thinking about last night, and I thought maybe if we, I'm like, oh my God, that's brilliant. I was thinking the same thing. Give it to me, you know, because we're both in another state of mind. We're both in a different dimension, and there's a lot more commonality in that dimension sometimes than we really realize.
Yeah, it sounds like it can be amazing collaboration when it's at its healthiest with the story producer.
It's like being in a band, you know, and same thing to me. Like you watch bandmates and they all just kind of get connected to this thing and they go into this zone and they start leading each other and following each other. We do the same thing.
I've got my eye on the clock. We're running out of time. This has been an amazing discussion. Before we go, I'd like to ask you guys, what keeps you going or what inspires you? What keeps you fresh?
For me, it's new work, new challenge. This career is great because each project is brand new. Each group of people is brand new. Even when we're revisiting series and revisiting people that with whom we've worked before, it's still just a new mountain to climb. So it's always fresh and new. I always feel like I'm always in a beginner's mind state. I've been in this business for, I don't know, 12, 13 years, but I still feel brand new every time I sit down. So
yeah, I think, you know, I try to choose jobs that are very different. You know, I mean, I'll go from a sports documentary to a music documentary, and you know, just trying to mix it all up. That keeps it fresh for me. But also just trying to do things differently and finding different ways to make enhance the films even more. I mean, you learn so much as you work through one that by the time you get to the next one, I've got a whole new tool set here that I can use on something completely different. And yeah, what else? I think just meeting new, amazingly creative people and collaborating, it means a lot to me. You know, I've worked with Alex Lacey on The Twist, and she's just probably the most incredible collaborative director I've ever come across. And that just brings love to a project, and I think that you can really see that on screen. So collaboration, diverse projects, and new skills.
yeah, so it's always new, man. And that's why we could just do this. I mean, you'll see editors. I mean, Walter Murch just made a great documentary and he's 80, you know. I mean, you can just keep on doing this because it's always new.
Yeah. And even though, like, you know, I've also been doing this for quite a while. I mean, I think on every project I kind of reach a point where, you know, I'm a bit, you know, it's a mountain in front of you. You've got so much material, you've got so much story, and it's just a blank timeline. You're like, oh my God, I'm gonna have to do this all over again, you know. And you know, at some point, you know, in the cut, somewhere around the midpoint, I kind of go, holy crap, can I do this? And then you know, you just keep pushing forward, and then the next thing you know, you're there, and you kind of like, you've got all this momentum behind you, and the film is just almost cutting itself. You know, you find it finds you, and yeah.
That's crazy though. That's very well said. Halfway through, you're like, does anyone know that I have no idea what I'm doing here?
Well, thank you both very much. It's obvious from watching your work and hearing you talk, you both definitely know what you're doing. And this has been a great opportunity for me to see your work, and I look forward to seeing more of it in the future. And this has been a really engaging conversation. Thank you, guys. And thank you, Manhattan Edit Workshop, for having us here. I know all three of us really enjoyed this. So until we see each other again, thanks.
Thank you, man. This is really awesome. Thank you.
All right, thanks again for tuning in to Sight, Sound, and Story, episode 49. Thank you to Nic Zimmermann, ACE, and Charles Little, II, ACE, and of course our old friend Garret Savage for moderating such an amazing event for us. Again, like and subscribe, and let us know if there's anything that you'd like to see in the future. I'd like to thank ACE, AJA, Filmmaker U, and Jason Banky and Janet Dalton for making the world go round. This is Josh Apter from Manhattan Edit Workshop. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time.